Today is Friday, November 27. My name is Pastor Anthony, and this is Wilderness Wanderings. Today our text comes from Psalm 50. But to the wicked person, God says, "What right have you to recite my laws or take my covenant on your lips? You hate my instruction and cast my words behind you. When you see a thief, you join with them. You throw in your lot with adulterers. You use your mouth for evil and harness your tongue to deceit. You sit and testify against your brother and slander your own mother's son. When you did these things and I kept silent, you thought I was exactly like you. But now I arraign you and set my accusations before you." I mentioned on Wednesday in another devotion on Psalm 50 that this psalm always arrests me. This section of the text is the reason why. God says, "When you did these things and I kept silent, you thought I was exactly like you." Turns out, though, God isn't exactly like us humans. He's God. God does not often enact judgment in the here and now, though. Much more often than God's judgment, in fact, we are confronted with God's silence. And actually, that can be a much harder thing to deal with. God's silence makes us wonder if some painful events in our lives are His judgment, or just the rough and tumble realities of a broken world where evil lurks. God's silence makes us wonder if He's really there at all. Confronted with this silent absence of God, some of us begin to collude with other Christians in sliding the scale of what's acceptable, maybe in our drinking or our language or our sexual activities, assuming that it's just white lies and harmless fun. Doesn't seem to be any consequences. Who's it hurting anyway? We're still good people. We try, and God knows it, so He's probably fine with it. As iron dulls iron, we begin to collectively lower God to our level, assuming from His silence that He is exactly like us. But I also wonder if perhaps more deeply, God's silence makes us wonder if He really cares or is invested in our lives after all. I think some of us begin to bend the rules for those reasons too. Maybe if we make enough noise, break enough rules, inflict enough harm, we'll finally get His attention. If we're bad enough, maybe He'll turn His face toward us and finally say something, anything. More broadly, God's silence makes us wonder if He really cares about this world at all. Because as Pastor Michael alluded to yesterday, it sure does seem sometimes like evil has the upper hand. We've seen adultery that rips a family apart. We've seen lies and deceit undermine a reputation or the truth itself. We see cruel and untamed language do real harm to people's lives and well-being, especially online. Far from seeing justice done, it seems only to get worse. God's silence leaves us with a lot of doubt about who He is and where He is. Is He really a good Father? Is He really a God of justice? Maybe He's just like us after all and is content to live with the status quo, as if sins like deceit, adultery, violence, and more just aren't all that serious or are too big to do anything about. Maybe all these high-flying promises about a world remade and set right in just judgment are nothing more than a fairy tale story. This Sunday is the first Sunday of Advent, a season which kicks off a new Christian year in anticipation of Christ's first coming as a little baby in Bethlehem, or better said, a remembering of it. Sunday before this first Sunday in Advent is known as Christ the King Sunday. It's the one we celebrated this past Sunday. And that Sunday prepares us for our other Advent anticipation, our anticipation of the second coming of Christ as King, to judge and to rule. As a Christian community, we take up these acts of remembering and anticipating in Advent so that we do not give up and lose hope that the God in whom we trust will indeed be good to His word. He sent His Son as He promised, after all, and that Son ascended as King and is seated at the right hand of God the Father Almighty, and from there He will come to judge the living and the dead. So you may not expect this, but I hope that through this devotion you see it. It is the promise of God's sure judgment in Christ that reminds us of and confirms to us God's love. Judgment is a confirmation that God is indeed paying attention, that He sees what is done and will set it right. It's a sign that He is invested enough in our lives and in our world to intervene and to sanctify us and this world to the best of His intentions for us. We expect that kind of thing from a parent, especially a heavenly one. And in Advent, we anticipate together the day when He will see it done. As you journey on, go with the blessing of God. May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, wherever He may send you. May He guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May He bring you home rejoicing at the wonders He has shown you. May He bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.